I'm Denise DuBois, and I'm the Reality Works Real Care Product Manager, and I've got some best practices for using baby that I'd like to share with you today. So number one, if you've not gone through the Real Care simulation yourself, we urge you to do it yourself so that you can better understand what you're asking of students and what they are going through. So if you have a free weekend or a free evening, go ahead and program a simulation for yourself and give it a try. I think you will find it very, very surprising, especially if you're new to the program. Another thing we like to encourage, if you're not going to use your babies right away in a semester or a quarter or your class, do get them out, have them on display. And we find that by having them out and having students see them, it really builds the excitement and the anticipation. They can't wait to do the baby project. You can also have them out because you can use your students as assistants to get them ready for deployment and take inventory, making sure everything's clean and inventoried and ready to go. Another thing to be aware of in the curriculum, there are some forms that you can use for parents to sign and students to sign. And just a reminder, if you're going to use any of the forms that require a signature before you hand your babies out, make sure you send those out at least 2 weeks ahead of time so that you get them back in time. Another thing that we think is very helpful when you're programming the babies is to use a sign-up sheet with your students and have a few columns on it. It can be student name, if you can decide if you want them to pick the gender or not, so boy or girl can be a column. If you want to allow them to name the baby, you could have a naming column, and then a column for any potential conflicts they might have during the simulation time frame, so that you know that ahead of time, because when you are setting up the simulation and programming it, you could program in a quiet time during any conflicts that they might have. And here's another good one. Get some positive press for your program. What you're doing is important and your community will really support you in what you're doing. So invite things like a newspaper, radio, anybody to come in, interview your students, take pictures if possible to see what you're doing because the community does see these babies out in public, in stores, restaurants, and things like that when students have them home on a weekend for a simulation. So a lot of them are familiar with it, and we think that it's great. Also use social media. Students do share very often on social media when they're having the Real Care Baby simulation experience, but you go ahead and share as well. Share some of your best practices with other teachers. Encourage your students to share what they're doing with other students. Again, it gets the word out about the great things you're doing in your program. Another thing you can do to make your program more interesting is invite community members in to be guest speakers. You could have law enforcement, police and law enforcement make really very interesting speakers on things like shaken baby, child abuse, and the legal consequences of mishandling a child. You could have any medical professional in that deal with infants on the job, such as nurses, pediatricians, even midwives, things like that. That can talk about medical consequences and conditions with infants and so forth, fetal alcohol, how drugs impact unborn babies and so forth. Social workers also make very great speakers because they can talk about how they work with infants on the job. Foster care, what does it take? What qualifications do you need to foster an infant and so forth? And of course, childcare professionals make really good speakers if you're doing some career exploration in childcare. And you could have childcare teachers in, or you could even have a center director in for different points of view on working with infants in a childcare setting. And then the last thing that we would like to mention today is take advantage of your Real Care curricula. As a baby customer, you have access to 4 free curricula that have hundreds of pages of lesson plans, assessments, slide presentations, activities, handouts, ready to go. And don't reinvent the wheel. So the 3 that I'd really like to point you to today, these are all high school level. Basic infant care is the one that you want to use if you have a career focus on childcare. It actively uses Real Care Baby in class to learn many childcare skills, and of course does culminate at the end with them taking the infant home, but they're acting independently as a childcare worker taking care of an infant in that simulation. We have healthy choices, relationships, sexuality, and family planning. And this is kind of a pregnancy prevention and a sex ed curriculum, if you will, for high school students. And it talks about relationships, dating, peer pressure, how to make good sexual decisions, refusal skills. Then it goes all through pregnancy, labor, delivery, and then the consequences of becoming a teen parent. So very, very impactful. That's the focus area program. And the simulation there is you are living the life of a teen parent. And then the third one is parenting. And this is one that covers topics from infant through age 3. And there's things like early literacy development, brain development, recreation and play, attachment, how to nurture your child, the cost of daycare. But then the simulation for parenting is you are the parent of an infant. So those are a few of my best practices that I wanted to share with you today, all about Real Care Baby.